like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones, a holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The papacy, this mockery, and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Tonight on Rogue Ways, we have a very special and exciting guest who comes to us not from her background as a civil engineer, but from her background as a soul plagued by dark and demonic entities, and as a conqueror of those evil aspects of existence, who has worked tirelessly to bring the ability to disperse the darkness to anyone who so chooses to fight that battle. Colleague of a past guest, Jerry Marzinski, developer of the That's a Lie program, and co-author of the book An Amazing Journey into the Psychotic Mind, Breaking the Spell of the Ivory Tower, which is now available online and at bookstores everywhere. Sherry Swiney, it is a very deep honor to have you here on Rogue Ways. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Lindsay. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. And I like to remind people before we get started just of a few things going on. I've got my site, rogueways.org. If you want to check out more content from me, there's a shop there where you can buy rogue gear and support the show. You can get a tarot reading while you're there if you're into that and you would like some guidance in your life. And you can also donate to the show there. Thank you for people who donate to the show. I am soon going to turn off the super chats and super messages or whatever from YouTube because they take so much of the money. And first I thought they did, and then I thought they didn't, and now I know they do, and there's no way to know how much they take or why, and I don't like that. So I'm going to turn that off, but I thank you to all the people who like to support me in that way, and I just suggest that instead of doing that, you go and do that through PayPal if you'd like, because it goes directly to me and nobody takes any of it. And so I appreciate the support no matter what, and thank you so much to all of you. You can also purchase my book right now, Sine Curve of Aeons. It is $15 on Amazon plus tax plus shipping, but it's $15 flat, no tax and no shipping from me anywhere in the United States. If you want to go to PayPal and just send me a $15 and tell me that it's for the book, then I will mail that out to you with a little inscription and a sticker about Rogue Ways. So you can do that. And I just finished the sequel. So if you want to listen to the audiobook, get a free copy of that book and then hear the audiobook of the sequel when I get to recording that. All of that is on my subscribestar.com/rogue-ways. If you subscribe above the $1 level, you get a free copy of Sine Curve of Aeons. And even the $1 subscribers are awesome. That's the foundation. You keep it going. So if you've ever found value in Rogue Ways and you want to see it keep going, then that is the way to do it. And finally, as I've been saying for a while, the podcast is back. So if you like to listen instead of watch on YouTube, then that is there for you. So back to the show. Sherry, I always like to start with a pointless question of the episode. And I was taking a walk today, and it's kind of a winter wonderland for the past few months. And so I was wondering, what's your favorite part of winter?
My favorite part of winter. Well, I love it right after a fresh snow, before there's any footprints on the snow. I love that.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
Winter is actually my favorite season, and I know people hate it and get sick of the cold and the short days, but I really like the cold for some reason. So
yeah, I'm not a big fan of winter time.
No, I think I'm kind of like a lone dove there. So
well, I like to garden, and so I can't do that in the winter time. So
do you have your own garden?
Yeah, I have gardens. I have vegetable gardens, and so I raise some of my own food.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's something I want to get into. I always tend to move around a lot, and so I never end up. I was like, we'll start a garden and then abandon it because I move away. So it'd be cool to stay somewhere long enough to get an established garden going because I would love to grow food. I think that that's something that we should all kind of have an eye toward doing eventually, if not already.
Yeah, I understand moving around for some 40 years when I was in construction. That's all I did. I'd move to one project and stay there for a year or two and then move off to another project. And they'd be in different states around the country. So,
oh, wow.
No way to plant gardens.
So you got a lot of traveling in at that time then?
Yeah, I did. And so now I'm staying put as much as I can.
You got the wandering out.
Well, I'm trying to develop this organic farm here, so I have to stay put to get some of that done. So
it's not just in a vegetable garden. You've got like the whole sort of setup
Not yet, but it's a work in progress, just like I'm a work in progress.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. What's your goal there?
The goal here at the farm?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm building a house, and
Awesome.
it's a earth berm house.
Cool.
And then I've got my raised bed gardens, and I have the start of an orchard, and so there's just an awful lot that has to be done. There's a gazillion things to do here. So
Yeah. Well, that's perfect that you've come to the point where you want to like settle down and put roots into that, and then you also are pursuing that project. And I mean, an earth berm construction. I don't know if I've heard of that. It's not an earth ship.
yeah, it's like an earth ship, only it's
Okay.
actually covered with dirt.
Oh, cool. It's like a hobbit house.
Yeah, sort of, only not small.
Oh my gosh. That's
Yeah.
so awesome.
Yeah.
How exciting.
They call them underground houses, but they're not really underground. They're like you cut a hole into the mountain, and then you build your house and then cover it up.
Wow.
Lots of windows in the front.
I don't know what it was, but when I was a kid, I would draw pictures like constantly, like obsessively of houses that were under hills or under mountains or like underground. Like that was like my thing.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of moles when we're kids. We like enclosed places.
Yeah, that's really cool. Are you looking kind of towards more self-sustainable sort of practices and living?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I have my water system is gravity flow, so it takes no electricity to run.
Cool.
And so I have a bit of an elaborate system to get that going, but it works like a charm.
Wow.
And so eventually I'll be on alternative energy totally, but I'm not there yet. I'm working toward it.
Wow. That is really, really cool. That's like a long-term goal for me is to get to that, as close to that as possible, at least. But you were in construction, it sounds like, so that would be something that's sort of up your alley that you can kind of do a lot of that yourself. But if you're someone who's not necessarily handy in those ways, then it's a lot more expensive than I think a lot of people realize.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I designed the house, which was quite a bit cost. It didn't cost so much to have an architect design it.
Oh, that's cool. Did you
Yeah.
do that through like a program, or was that just something you're...
I just did sketches, and I took it to an architect to draw out the final drawings, but I already had the design on a piece of paper.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, but I needed regular drawings to give to the contractor to do the building.
Wow. So it's like completely 100% your creation, basically.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
Well, if you would, why don't you take us back to sort of the beginning and where you sort of started in life? Like, what was your early life like?
Okay. Well, my early life doesn't resemble my life today at all.
It's like the opposite.
Yeah. So my early life, I was born not too long after World War II. And so at that time, my father, who was probably in his middle 20s, something like that, was quite enamored by the Japanese torture methods.
Ew.
And so I was at the age of 3. I was used as his lab subject for testing some of these things to see how they worked.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so they were really, really terrible. But I got to the point where one time I accidentally left my body during one of these lab sessions. He would put on a lab coat and have a clipboard and do the whole thing. Very cold and very calculated.
Yeah.
I don't realized just how it was affecting me at all.
Really? So he's a like true sociopath, you think?
I don't know.
But it wasn't like satanic abuse or like he was getting some sort of pleasure out of it, as far as you can
No, as
tell.
far as I know, he was just trying to do some testing and figure out how this worked.
Wow.
I was there to be his subject.
Poor baby.
Anyway, so I left my body during this one session, and I ended up in this beautiful, gorgeous garden. And it looks very similar to where I am right now, actually.
Wow.
Very serendipitous, I think.
Interesting.
And yeah, very. And so I got to the point where I could just leave my body anytime I wanted to. All I had to do was think of that place, and then I would be there.
Wow.
I can't do that anymore, but I could as a child. And so I grew up with that kind of. Let me back up a little bit. I need to explain how when we're born, from the age of 0 to 6 or 7, our brains are actually in theta state.
Yeah.
So theta state, as you know, is like a meditative state, or it's a hypnotic state. So when you're in theta state as a child and you're 100% theta, that's how you're learning about your environment. That's how we learn how the world works. And everything that we experience, or that we see, or we hear, we take in as truth, and that goes into our subconscious, and that becomes our program. So we're actually from the very beginning programmed by other people.
Good point.
Yeah, and so we don't know to make up our own minds, because we don't know any different. So when I went through this that's why public schools want the children earlier and earlier and earlier.
And now they want them from infancy on. They're like, free childcare for everyone is the new proposal.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh.
Let's paint the picture to sound like they're trying to do us a good service. When
right.
in fact, all they want to do is brainwash our children.
Right. When in fact you shouldn't need childcare for your infant anyway. You should be able to have enough money to stay home with them or whatever. It's sick.
Well, yeah, of course, that's not the reality of today's world.
No.
But it could be.
It should be, yeah.
It could be. It very well could be. So, and I want to get to that later on in the show as to how it could be that. So just give you the background of how we're programmed, as every single one of us goes through this. We're all programmed by our immediate environment, and everybody's different. You can have 2 people in the same house and they each get their own set of programs. And so, there's different cultures, there are different beliefs. You have to be programmed to be prejudiced. You have to be programmed to be a religious fanatic. You have to be programmed to be a woman hater or a man hater, or, you have to be programmed to be that, because that's not our nature. Our nature is actually loving beings.
Right.
So anyway, so I went through that. I got taken away from my father, and then I was scheduled to be put in an orphanage, but there wasn't room, so I had to wait for 6 months in the juvenile detention center.
How old were you at this point?
I was 6.5.
Okay.
So I was there for 6 months. Ended up getting in a fight with a 12-year-old girl who scratched my eyelids terribly. Oh. I got blamed for it, so I was the one that got thrown in solitary confinement for 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
Thought I was going to die, no bathroom facilities, and was starved, and, so then that was over with, and I was so happy when that was over with. And then I went to the orphanage, and there was 500 girls that lived there. It was a beautiful, beautiful grounds. From the outside, it looks like, this really, really wonderful, peaceful place run by the nuns, Catholic nuns. But inside, the abuse to those girls is horrible. Anyway, so I lived through that.
So you just went from one horrifying situation to another.
Yeah, that's the whole point. I went through one horrifying situation to another, and got out at 13, and was sent back to my father's house.
Wow. So what made them take you in the first place? Like someone realized that he was torturing you and tried to do something about it, or?
No, I don't think anybody knew that. If they did, I wasn't aware of it. But I think what happened, he and my mother had divorced, and I think she didn't want me there for her own reasons. I don't know them. and I can't ask because they're all dead. So anyway, so that happened. I think she had something to do with me being taken away from him, but I really don't know because I was too young.
Right.
All I knew was they came and got me and took me away. So, and then put me in this juvenile detention center where all that stuff happened. And then I went from there to the orphanage and all that stuff happened. And then I came home and went to my father's house, and I left at 16.
Did he go back to torturing you when you went back? No. Okay.
No, he was a completely different person.
Weird.
He was, in fact, he taught me how to fish and hunt, and we'd go on camping trips, and he would teach me how to walk through the woods quietly like the Indians did. And
wow.
Great fun. It was wonderful. And the weirdness of all of this is that from that point on, I had no memory of what had happened for those 13 years.
Wow.
It was so traumatic that I just pushed it back, and I had no memory of it at all.
Wow.
Well, so the memory didn't come back until much later on in life, like when I was maybe, I think I was about 27, 28, 29, something like that. It came back after another traumatic event.
Mm.
And that was such a traumatic event that it jarred me so much that all of a sudden I had this tsunami of memories rush in all of a sudden. It was overwhelming.
I can't imagine.
And I was trying to figure out, what had happened. And so after I got finished with this movie reel going on in my mind of all these memories and stuff that I didn't even know. I mean, they were horrible memories.
Yeah.
And so it was at that point that I started looking at my life and how I was reacting to people and the people I was hanging around with and the things that I was doing. If those memories were true, then that kind of explained some of what I saw myself doing.
Mm.
So I was old enough then to try to figure out, well, how do I change this?
Yeah. You were kind of in a self-destructive place.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just like inevitable.
I got all these wrong messages in my theta brain that I didn't even know were there until this memory came back.
Wow.
Anyway, so I'm drinking water in between here. That's why a little break. So let's see. So go ahead.
Sorry, were you in between those ages? You said you left home at 16. Did you and your father kind of become estranged and you kind of just went on your life path and, went about working or whatever you did then? Or was it like, how did that kind of go?
Yeah, I was fed up with him. And so I got up the nerve to say, I'm out of here. And he said, once you walk out that door, you can't come back. I said, fine, I'm gone.
Okay, bye.
See you later. And so I left. I didn't go back and visit him for a couple of 2-3 years. And, but, he was my dad. So children love their fathers for the most part.
Yeah.
Regardless of what they do.
It's true.
Since I didn't remember any of what had happened, I was like, okay, he's my dad. I'll go say hello. And I loved him and, carried on like that. So
yeah,
I didn't know.
But you just kind of took care of yourself after that and lived on your own.
I did. I was 16 when I left. I was still going. I was getting ready to graduate high school. I had a job after high school that would paid 50 cents an hour because that was quite a long time ago. And then, but I found an apartment that was in the garage of a house. It was like an in-law apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And this elderly couple lived upstairs. He was a bus driver. He drove the city bus. And by then I had a job in town, and his bus route went right to my place of work. So he would tell me, if you get to the corner at such and such a time, I won't charge you for the bus.
Ooh.
So I'd get a free ride into work. And then I was making enough money to pay for the apartment. I think the apartment was like, it was a furnished apartment. And it was like $65 a month.
If only.
If only. Yeah. So, but it was a small little studio type apartment. And the woman that was upstairs, she would often see, because I was going to work and then I was going to school after work, to try to get some kind of education and degree. And so she would come down and she'd have a plate of food with a lid over the top, and she'd say, I cooked too much food tonight, and so I thought I'd maybe bring the leftovers down to you if you're hungry.
Sweet.
You're very sweet. Very kind of subtle. So that was good, because my refrigerator had sardines and crackers in it, and that was it.
Yeah.
Okay to get by, right? And
it's nice that you got like a little space there where you had some care, from other people. That
I did, yeah. And these were lovely people. I'll never forget them. Anyway, so that's how I took care of myself until, let me think. Some of my memory in those days is a little bit, the timing is off.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Yeah, but when did it happen? What was the sequence?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so long story short, when my memory came back of all those things, and I realized that I had been, and I was looking at my life and the kinds of things I was doing, and realizing, well, I don't want to be doing those things anymore. And now I kind of see why I was doing it. I figured I was conditioned or brainwashed or programmed.
Yeah.
Because by then, I already wasn't happy with the way that I was, but I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't know. There was an awful lot I didn't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I ended up questioning, how can I stop this? How can I change this? And so I started looking at books. And by then, I was hearing these, not audibly hearing, but having these horrible, malicious thoughts just pop into my head from nowhere that I wouldn't think of. I would never think of on my own.
Yeah. Like intrusive. Not even really.
Very intrusive. I wouldn't be thinking about anything malicious. None of that would be going on, but all of a sudden this stuff would pop into my head.
And when you're having that at first, were you able to recognize it and instantly kind of be like, whoa, what the hell was that? Or was it,
I recognized that I didn't think those thoughts.
Okay.
I recognized that because it's nothing I would have ever thought of.
Right.
So they were so foreign to me that I didn't, they sounded just like my own thoughts. It sounded identical to my own thoughts, but I hadn't thought of them. It was very, very weird.
Yeah.
And scary, very scary, because I thought maybe something was wrong with me.
Mm-hmm. I
hadn't connected yet that they were some kind of outside being.
Yeah. And that makes sense to me, because you're saying, it sounds the same. Or if you're someone who's not necessarily like an audible thinker, like if it was visual or whatever, like that would kind of almost be in your like same tone or tenor. And at the same time, the quality of it was such that like that was foreign to you, but your first assumption would be like, there must be something wrong with me, because what else would it be?
Yeah, because
that's all you've ever known.
Yeah, I wouldn't think these things, and when it happened once or twice, it's like, whoa, where did that come from? But then it kept on happening, and they were such terrible things. And then I started wondering what was wrong with me. So I decided to start reading up on the brain and doing some research on that. And so I went to the bookstore, and I spent a lot of time in the library and read everything I could get my hands on the conventional ideas of the brain. And that wasn't helping. I mean, it was a really interesting topic, but that wasn't really answering my questions.
Yeah.
So one day I was in the bookstore and I thought, well, I think I'll go look at some of the self-help books and see what they have. I'd never read a self-help book before. And so I'm looking around and not knowing it and not having any idea who to read or what to read. And all of a sudden this book fell off the shelf on the floor, hit my foot.
Wow.
And I leaned down to pick it up and it was, the title of it was Your Erroneous Zones.
Weird.
I thought, now what kind of, how appropriate is this?
Yeah.
So I
Wow.
flipped through it and thought, well, okay, let me go to the coffee shop and read it for a bit and see if I want to buy this book. And it was by a guy named Wayne Dyer.
That sounds really familiar.
Yeah, he's pretty popular.
Okay.
I now know that he was pretty popular, but at the time I'd never heard of him.
Right.
And so maybe your listeners know who he is.
I bet they probably know better than I do. They have good memories.
So I took it home and read it. And there was a phrase in there that changed my life. Just a sentence. I don't remember the exact words of the sentence, but in essence, it was that you have complete control of your thoughts and nobody can make you think anything you don't want to think. And nobody can make you feel any way that you don't want to feel. And I'm like, I put the book down on my lap and I'm like, really? I had no idea. I didn't know that there was such a thing as choice of what I could think. I hadn't figured that out yet.
Yeah. No one taught you. No one tells you these things. Like, we're not taught.
Yeah. No, well, nobody told me that stuff. I was in the middle of getting totally brainwashed and tortured and, beaten and
For
starved.
years. Yeah.
All this abuse and stuff. There's no way I would know that.
No. Totally.
And so I was thrilled. I was just absolutely thrilled. And I read the whole book and then I started saying, okay, so if I have control of my brain, how do I do that? It's like, okay, that's nice that I now know that I can do that, but I don't know how to do that.
That's a whole different skill set.
Yeah, no kidding. So by then I was working for an engineering construction firm. And I went into the office one day. I had this on my mind so heavily. I want to know how to do that. And so as serendipity would happen again, universe was speaking to me. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the book was like thrown at you basically.
Right at me. Here's an answer. Go for it.
Yeah.
So then, and I had this in my mind, and I don't know how to do it, and I want to know how to do this because I have to figure out how to do this, or there's something wrong with me, one or the other.
Yeah.
And so I went to work this one day, and my boss comes up to me and he says, we just got a contract that is for writing a computer program for a water district, and we thought maybe you might be interested in being on the project. And I said, sure. He said, well, we need someone that knows how to do computer programming, and I was wondering if you were interested in taking classes. I said, yeah.
That's fun.
So I went and started taking classes to learn computer programming to do this project. And as I'm learning this stuff, I'm realizing that I'm writing a program, and that is really similar to what I learned about the brain when I was studying the brain and how the brain works. And then my life of how we can be programmed.
Interesting.
So it was like I made this correlation between a computer program and the brain program. And then all of a sudden I got this theory. What if I could reprogram my own brain?
That's awesome.
And so my engineering background, it's like, yeah, okay, so let's get into the details of all of this stuff. And it was so convoluted and so complicated. I'm like, no, I can't rewrite the code, like you would on a computer program. It's just there's a gazillion things to rewrite, and I wouldn't know where to start. So, but I thought it was a pretty good theory anyway. I just didn't have the answer yet. So I kept thinking about it and thinking about it. It's like, then the thoughts would come and barge in, and like, you know, I would have to stop what I was doing and just try to think of something else, and it just wouldn't work. They were so pervasive.
In the actual experience itself, it was really difficult to.
Yeah, it was. All I could do was think about the stuff that was being literally injected into me. Knowing that I wouldn't think these thoughts. And I finally realized that these can't be my thoughts. These have to be coming from elsewhere, because it was not something I could just switch on and off. So as I was going through that, I don't remember exactly when I came up with the idea, but it was like one night I was thinking about it. How do I do that? How do I change the program? And then I thought, well, okay, I need something simple that I can remember when I'm being attacked.
Because in that moment, you're, I'm sure, like too overwhelmed to have anything complicated. So it would have to be simple and quick.
And so I knew that what the thoughts were lies. I knew they were lies because I wasn't thinking them. I had finally made the correlation that they were being injected into me by something or someone, or I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so I figured, okay, so what if I just try thinking that's a lie and, see what happens. So because I could remember that. It was not complicated. So I started using that, and it was very successful. It took me a long time. I had to stick at it, stay with it. And then as I was doing that, I was learning about, when we come into this world, we're automatically bombarded with programs by others. And I realized that these dark entities, they know that. They grab onto it. They manipulate it. And they manipulate the individual to make things bigger than they are, or worse than they are, or they can't create anything on their own, but they can manipulate it to change someone's perception of it. So they can make something good feel like something bad, for example. Anyway, so I developed this That's a Lie program, and my theory was that if I continued to do this new program and didn't do the other programs, then the older programs that I'm not doing would eventually atrophy. And my theory has proven to be correct. It does work.
I think it's incredibly, your powers of observation and presence of mind are amazing to me, because I just think it would be really hard for a lot of people to, even if they notice like, this doesn't feel like my normal thoughts, or there's probably something wrong with me, and like, I think it'd be really hard for most people to actually take the sort of step to say like, no, that's definitely not me. And I'm actually going to do this and try and affect it in this way. And, for you to sort of find the hack that could take that apart it just shows an amazing presence of mind. And I just think that's really cool. And like you said, you had some sort of like help from the universe and, some signs and stuff along the way, which just makes it all the more amazing. But I mean, how long do you think it took from when you started saying that's a lie every time you heard one of these thoughts or had one of these experiences to when it stopped?
I would say for me, since I had nobody to talk to at all, and I didn't want to talk to anybody about it because I knew they would put me in a mental institution and I'd be drugged to oblivion. So yeah. I already didn't trust the allopathic medicine.
Good.
because of other experiences. So I would say that it probably took me a good 10 years.
Wow. You really stuck with it.
And I stuck with it because I didn't want that. I mean, I really didn't want that. Now, it doesn't take other people, since I kind of broke that mold, then it doesn't take other people that long to do it if they stick with it. And Jerry has actually used this program on some of his schizophrenic patients, and been very successful with it.
That's amazing. This is a thing that you can actually see in all sorts of fields all around the world, all throughout time, that once one person sort of like finally breaks through, like you're saying, breaks through the mold, or like accomplishes the thing, whatever the thing is, then everyone else has an easier time doing it from then on, like forever.
Well, that's because it's in the field.
Isn't that amazing?
It's already in the field. And so,
yeah,
it's very true. And I don't know that I'm the only one that's ever done that, but I'm one of the few who have done it on my own and published it.
And I mean, it's like there's this idea in there too, where I think it's amazing anytime someone, like at some point, somebody has to start from scratch and do something like this, you know, like the first person who ever heard voices, like what did they do, or how did they handle it, or no matter what we're talking about, the first person to do something. So I mean, there's always like a pioneer of the field that sort of breaks through and does this. And I think that's amazing in itself too, because then from then on, we look and we say, well, this is the way we do this. And this is the, you know, we know, and here's the tools we use, and the path is paved, but there's always someone who has to like literally like whack through the bushes and create that path for us. And you are that person.
Yeah. And that path, when the person is whacking through the path on their own, it's not an easy path at all. But I
10 years.
I'm really, really thankful to universe for all that happened to me, because, you know, the going out of the body made it so that what was happening to me during the torture sessions, yes, it hurt, and it was terribly painful, which caused me to go out of my body. So I didn't feel the bulk of the pain. I had to do the healing when I came back, get patched up and bandaged up, you know, stuff like that to heal. And that was very uncomfortable, but it wasn't the same kind of trauma that it would have been had I not left my body.
Yeah.
So I had that on my side. And then I had one of the torture things was sleep deprivation. And what happened was I'd go to bed, and then my father would yank me out of bed, put me on this hard chair. And then he was an architect by trade. And so he loved math, and he liked classical music, and, you know, it's just very complicated guy. I don't know the whole story of his life, so I don't really understand where he was coming from. So I sat there, and I couldn't go to sleep. I couldn't yawn. So I'd sit there, and he would read math books, architectural books, you know, things like that I was way too young to understand, but apparently some of it went in. And in the meantime, I'd be sitting there looking at him, and I'd be here having these horrible thoughts of, you know, I could hurt him, and he, you know, or he's going to hurt me, or, you know, all kinds of really, or, you know, he hates me, and it just horrible things. And so, and I got into trouble a couple of times when I'd lash out at these thoughts saying, stop it, go away. And then my dad didn't know that I wasn't talking to him. He thought I was talking to him, and then I'd get thrown across the room. You know. Anyway, so in fact, I think I put that story in the book, come to think of it. Yeah. Because it's a pretty intense story.
Yeah.
But I tried to keep it short because it is a short book. You know, I think it's like 151 pages or something. Anyway, so, but I would sit there, and somehow I'd play with his head in my mind's eye, and I would be able to shrink his head down to like a size of an orange. And that was kind of funny to me. So, and I would do things like that to keep from being traumatized, apparently.
Yeah.
So I didn't have, I had trauma, but my mind was doing something else with it. So I still had a strength of character. Even when I was in the orphanage, I stood up for the girls when because we were all getting abused, and I couldn't stand. I didn't like it myself, but I couldn't stand watching somebody else getting abused.
Yeah.
And so I would often intervene, and then I'd get it twice as bad. But I don't know why I did that. Nobody else there was doing that.
No.
And but I hated seeing the girls being beaten, and I would intervene from the when I could, if I wasn't being held back, physically being held back. I would often run and disrupt the beating and take the SWAT, get in the middle of it and take the SWAT or something like that, just to keep me from having to see that girl being beaten. That's a really traumatic thing for anybody to see, much less experience. But I think it's really harder to see it than it is to experience it.
Well, you I think develop an amazing sense of empathy when you're abused, because your life and your well-being depends on your ability to sort of understand what the other person is doing or going to do, or when they're going to do it, or why they're going to do it. And so as much as possible, you can be ready for whatever it is. And I think that extends then beyond the abuse situation to, now you have this heightened sense of empathy always. And so especially then if you're seeing someone else experience that, I think you'd be more than most people affected by it.
Yeah, and then my to help me even further, my brain took all those experiences and tucked them away somewhere that I didn't remember them, so that when I had the battle to beat the bush and do this thing, I didn't have all of that right off the bat. I wasn't living it day by day, although I really was reacting to the conditioning that I received. I just didn't know where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to, and I guess because of all the reading of the architectural stuff and the math stuff, I just naturally went into engineering.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I had an analytical mind already. I don't know if it came from that or not. I'm just kind of assuming that had something to do with it.
Yeah. And
so I had this analytical mind. I love to do research. I like to find answers. And so, that's just kind of the path that I took.
It's like you were, created for this path almost, It
is.
Yeah.
It kind of is. It feels that way.
Right. I mean, it definitely feels like that. And it looks like that, especially with what you've gone on to do with it and share this with other people, and literally change the world and the sort of morphogenetic field so that this is now easier for anyone else who's dealing with it. But when you go back to that, torture you're experiencing from the age of 3 on, or from however early on, do you think that like opened you up to these other entities to kind of come in and attack, like when you left your body? Or do you think it's tied up with that, other than just that you experienced horror? And I don't know. How do you think those...
I'm convinced that anybody who is abused, whether it's physical abuse or emotional abuse or spiritual abuse, whatever kind of abuse it is, that opens the door for these entities to slip right in, because they, here's what they are. They're invisible entities. They're outside of our visual spectrum. And when you look at our visual spectrum, we're practically blind here on Earth.
Yeah.
We only see like 0.011100, whatever, tiny percent of the visual spectrum, and everything else is there, but our eyes are not designed to see them, or our brains are not designed to perceive them, which I think we used to be able to see more. It's just like, animals can see better in a lot of instances. They can hear better, they can smell better, they can sense things around them, because they're not bombarded with programs that we have.
Yes.
So I think we used to have those capabilities, and I think we're starting to evolve into getting those abilities back.
Yeah.
Anyway, where was I? I left.
Why the entities sort of come and attach to certain.
Yeah. So they're actually, they feed off of negative energy.
Mm.
They can't create it on their own, so they have to get it from us. And the way they get it from us is to trick us into feeling emotionally negative. So any kind of, because we're not naturally negative people. We're naturally very loving. We're a very loving species. You wouldn't know it to look at what's going on the planet, but that's the truth. And if the person remembers that, then they'll know that anytime they have a negative feeling, a negative thought about themselves or about anybody else, or they do, they have any kind of negative from fear to anxiety to worry to insecurity, anything that is in that negative spectrum, that actually is something that we project, because we're frequency beings, we're electrical beings. And that's a frequency, and that frequency changes depending on how we're feeling, how we think, and how we feel. So when we're feeling negative, or we're having negative thoughts, and we take them in and we say, oh yeah, I feel really bad about myself for this, that, or the other thing, that gives off a negative frequency, and that's the food for these entities. That's how they survive. So, but they can't create it on their own. They have to trick us into feeling that. So if we know that, then that's half the battle right there.
Yeah, that's actually really empowering.
It is. I mean, I don't know if they hate us or not. Some people say they do, but I think they're just trying to survive.
Yeah.
And the way that they do that, for some unknown reason, is to make everything chaotic and hateful and divided and, everything but love.
Right. I have my theories about that too, how they kind of ended up in the spot they're in. Well, I kind of developed this based on various things really, but Neil Kramer is a sort of philosopher, spiritualist sort of guy, and he is the one that put it this way that made a lot of sense to me based on, because I've been thinking about it a lot over the years and trying to figure out, why would any entity do this? Why would any being do this? Why would, it's kind of like Monsters Inc. Like, wouldn't they get more food from love? And if we're naturally loving and joyous, why wouldn't they just help us create more of that? And I think that he might be right when he talks about how, there's these, maybe they even started as humans, whatever their consciousness was, they sort of tried to find like a shortcut to a spiritual or consciousness evolution, however you want to think about that. Instead of going through this like natural process that I think humans go through to sort of evolve as spiritual beings or conscious beings. And so instead of going through that, they found this shortcut. But in doing that, although it did, spit them up into this like higher dimension, or however you want to describe that, when they got there, they realized they couldn't no longer create anything. And so whatever like amount of energy, basically, let's put it that way, that they came there with, like that was it. And it was going to slowly dwindle and dwindle and dwindle. And when it was gone, then they would be like shot back to whatever reset, a soul could go through, and then have to start again from zero, from like the amoeba consciousness or whatever consciousness starts at. And so to avoid that, they found out that they could influence us, but we have ultimate free will, and they now didn't. And we have creativity, and they didn't. And so they had to trick us into, doing this and this for whatever reason, like negativity and fear and whatever gives more energy to that dimension than anything else. I kind of elaborated and added some of my own stuff, but the structure of that came from Neil Kramer.
Yeah, I've heard that idea, but not with these entities. I've heard that idea associated with the Greys that, abduct people, and I've heard that they're more robotic than a sentient being.
Interesting.
That's actually how I look at these dark entities, that they are, if you're ever dealing with them, you'll notice, and we all, every single one of us gets attacked by them from one degree or another.
Yeah.
So if you pay attention to what the attack says, and you call it a lie right away, and to help it go away. But if you notice the kind of pattern that they have, they seem to be very robotic. In other words, they don't have a creative thought of their own. And so they seem to be running off some kind of program. Now, in writing the book, Dr. Wilson Van Dusen came up with he noticed the same thing with his patients, that the voices that the patients were hearing seemed to have quite a robotic nature. I was happy to see that because, that kind of validates what I'm seeing.
It's kind of like they're like, well, this is the way I do this, and if that doesn't work, like, oh shit, I don't know what to do now. Like, the program didn't work.
That's exactly right. And they would always come to me and say these things, and then I would say that's a lie, and then they'd go away, and then they'd come back and say the same thing again, and I'd say that's a lie, and then they go away. Disappear for a long while, and then come back and say the same thing again, as though if they said it enough times, maybe this time I might agree. They're just not very creative in their thoughts.
Or like if they said it in the right circumstance, like, oh, this time she's really stressed out, let's try it now.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know what it is, but there's another weapon that I found later on after I developed the That's a Lie program that is really powerful, and that is you say that's a lie, and then you say, I send you love. Mm. Now, the love that I'm sending is what I call cosmic love. It's an unconditional love. It's not a three-dimensional physical type of love that we have for our friends and families and, pets and things like that. It's actually a love that has, in my mind anyway, it's not attached to emotion, which is kind of hard to explain. But if you're drawing in the universal love, you can draw it into your heart and feel that emotion. But if you're just drawing it in to send it out to these entities, you can do that without feeling the emotion. Now, Jerry has asked me to explain this so that anybody can understand it, and I'm not sure that I can, but I'll try. And because he's like, how can you send love to these hateful, miserable, terrible, beings that are torturing these people? I said, it's different. You're sending a frequency of love. That's it. You're just sending the frequency of love. You're not sending it with any emotion. The same as you're saying that's a lie. It's the same kind of emotion. You don't say that with emotion. It's a matter of fact. And that makes them actually run away.
This is similar to a practice I have that you kind of you want to like channel an emotion through you, or channel some things through you, or like help someone else sort of like channel their own stuff out of themselves, but not have it touch you or stick to you. And so you kind of picture yourself as like a hollow bone. And so as things can kind of come through without getting stuck there or attached there, and just sort of keep flowing. And so when you were talking about that, that's what I'm picturing is like, you're letting the cosmic love, whatever you want to call, like kind of come through you and just shoot like straight into them without taking from your own sort of resources.
That's an excellent way to describe it. I like that.
Thank you. You're welcome to
borrow it
steal it whenever you want.
Yeah, that's pretty good actually. So yeah, that's and in fact, I wrote that in part 2 of the That's a Lie program to explain the programming that we get from age 0 to 7, and then also to explain the I Send You Love step in the That's a Lie program. So there are people that have used this. They're not suffering from schizophrenia, but they have been suffering with the voices, and lots of them. And so there's people that have used that method, and they're like, oh my God, this is awesome. This is like magic. It just happens so quickly, and some of these people have been going on for years and years being bombarded with these horrible thoughts. And then they read the part 1 and part 2 of the program and use it, and they notice a difference right away. But if they don't keep it up, it comes right back. But at least they notice a difference right away, so they know that it's possible. It's a wonderful tool.
It is a wonderful tool.
It's not the only answer, but it's an answer that does work.
Well, and I love that it works like you had pointed out, because you didn't use any mind-altering psychotropic drugs or anything. You didn't have even psychologists or counselor or therapist or anything supporting you. You used this from scratch and had it be that effective for you. And so I love that anyone can just use this. You don't have to have money. You don't have to pay anybody for it. It's just something that you can immediately apply and have relief. And that is my favorite thing about it, I think, because I think there's so many people who are struggling, and, when they ask for help or what they should do, it's like there's not a lot out there for them. And all of it costs money almost all the time, and all of it takes all of this time and all of these resources, and it's just not accessible to everybody. So I love that.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm really thrilled that it's helped as many people as it has, and I'm hoping to get the word out that this exists.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost anything. You just have to have a computer to go find it.
Right.
And then read up on it, and then take it to heart, and then practice it over and over and over again. Like, I get emails from people saying, well, I tried this and I thought it was just a one-time deal, but now I realize, no, I have to do this like every single time I hear a negative thought. Until, how long do I have to do this? Well, you have to do it until it stops.
Which might be forever.
Well, I don't know how long that'll be. It probably won't be forever if you
Hopefully
keep
not.
it up.
Right.
But if you don't keep it up, the voices will continue to attack. When you least expect it, they might go away for a while. They still come and attack me, but I catch on right away. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a lie, and I send you love.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's it. They're gone.
That's
so
pretty.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't have to get emotional about it. It's like I get this weird thought in my head. I'm like, okay, there you are. And I can laugh at them because to me, they have no power over me at all. They have no power over anybody. The only power that they get is what we give them. And if we are aware of that, we're just like, okay, I'm not giving you any power anymore. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm done doing that.
And
So,
hopefully you're also then, like, maybe they will eventually move on from whatever realm they're in and actually, like, take that love and get out of there and stop doing this to other people, too. That'd be even better.
that would be much better. I know Jerry's had some success in sending them to the light.
Wow.
I don't know if he told that story. I don't think he told you that story.
I don't think he did either.
Yeah, with some of his patients, he's done that.
Wow.
So it's possible.
I believe it.
I haven't done that, and I haven't been interested in doing that. I've just been interested in, getting them out of my life.
Yeah.
But there's if there's some merit to that, then he should talk about that some, because I don't have any experience with doing that.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but it reminds me when I was, in my Buddhist phase or whatever. And I think there's a lot of merit to a lot of Buddhist practices and traditions, and some of them have stayed with me. But when I was kind of more fully immersed in it, one of the concepts when you are when you're looking at, people who are dying, or even animals who have died or whatever, you can visualize them sort of like going up and integrating back into the light, or however you want to think about that, but visualize them going into the light and helping them move on. And so I've always kind of kept that in my head. Now that's what that's reminding me of now. But
yeah, you just reminded me of, I had a cat once. I like cats. So I had this pet cat. He was actually a feral cat. So he lived outside. And he got run over by a vehicle, but I was right there when it happened. And so I ran over, and he was, his body was convulsing and carrying on. So I had to wait till it calmed down a little bit so I didn't get scratched. Anyway, so I picked him up, and that moment he left his body. And I felt his spirit leave.
Wow.
And I remember saying, oh, that's how it works.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was so, I really, really felt him leave.
Oh.
I was holding him in my arms. And then I had this lifeless thing in my arms next after he left. It's like, oh, you're not there anymore.
Wow.
You're just a shell. But I remember when he left, I'm like, oh, that's how it works. Okay. Yeah, it was very enlightening, actually.
Yeah. Because how rare is it to have like the moment of death be in your arms? Like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've never had anything like that before. But that was actually awesome. I was sad to not have him around anymore, but I knew he was okay.
Because you saw him go, you knew he was still there.
I felt him leave. I didn't see him leave. I just felt his presence leave. And it was very, very noticeable. Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
I think that's a beautiful thing, because that's one of those things where it's like true gnosis. You experience it. And so, like now no one could ever convince you otherwise that there's, no such thing as spirit or soul, or that, when we die, everything just stops. It's like, you're like, no, I know better.
Yeah, well, and I went on a retreat at the Monroe Institute for, I think it was a 6-day retreat. And do you know who Robert Monroe is?
Yeah, I've used some of his meditations to great success.
Yeah, well, I read his book a long time ago. It was Journeys Out of the Body.
Yeah.
And in fact, that was part of a book that I came across while I was doing some of the research I was doing.
Huh.
And so I, kind of reminded me of, I left my body when I was just a little girl. And I wondered if I could do it again. And I tried some of the exercises in the book and wasn't successful at all. Of course, I had so much stuff on my mind at the time. No wonder. Anyway, so I went up to the retreat and went through that course and had a couple of out-of-body experiences, so that I knew that I was out of my body. And then it got confirmed by there was 22 students in that class, and it got confirmed by one of the students, because we would go to our little cubicle and do the meditations and the music and the hemi-sync and all that good stuff. And then we would go through that, and then we would all meet in this one room to share our experiences. It was pretty awesome.
Wow.
So anyway, after this one time, I went out of my body, and I was just floating around inside the building where we were studying. And then I came across this one student, and I gave her the thumbs up, like hi. And then I went back into my body again. And then when we met together in the room, I walked in, she said, I saw you. I said, oh my God, this is real.
Wow.
Because up until that point, I kind of wondered if it was my imagination or whatever.
Right.
And so, the scientific mind in me wanted some kind of confirmation that this was actually real. And so she did that for me.
Wow.
I saw you and you gave me the thumbs up. I'm like, whoa.
That's so cool. How did you get, is that just something that people can do, or were you invited, or how did that work?
No, you can sign up for a course.
Okay.
Just go to the Monroe Institute, and they have them now around the country. I don't know exactly where they are, but the one I went to was in Virginia.
That's cool. I know a lot of people in the community have issues with the Monroe Institute because there's connections with like the CIA and whatnot. But I mean, I think, of course, the CIA would be interested in a tool that works that well. So I don't think it necessarily means that it's like a negative institution or whatever. But
no, it's not a negative institution. In fact, the physicist Thomas Campbell helped. He was one of the physicists there that helped develop some of the programs. And I don't know if you're familiar with Thomas Campbell or not.
I don't think so.
Look him up. He is a phenomenal physicist, and he's come up with the measurements of our consciousness in a room, and where consciousness can affect material things, and he's done that.
This is why it confuses me when people don't believe in these things, because I'm like, there has been scientific experiments that have been replicated.
He's written scientific papers, and yes, he's out of the norm, but he's written scientific papers, and then there's Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Yeah.
And I'm studying him right now, and he's done the science and got the measurements, and he's got a scientific staff. And I happen to know one of the scientists that's involved that has the equipment that measures the energy in a room, because he invited me to a conference at the University of Louisville University in Kentucky. They had this conference going on that they wanted to introduce this equipment and the whole notion of the non-physical world. And this was to every professor in that university, no matter what their discipline was, whether it was English or accounting or engineering or, science or biology, it didn't matter what it was. Everybody was, I don't know if it was compulsory, but they were all invited. And then I got invited. I was the only one that wasn't a professor. So I was thrilled, but, because I knew about this stuff from this scientist friend of mine. So, he sent me an invitation, and I was really delighted to go there and listen to the talk and then watch the looks on these professors' faces. Like, you got to be kidding. This is real. So they showed the measurements on with this equipment that they now have. They were making the readings as everybody was entering this theater. And then they did a couple of meditations, and some of these people hardly knew what meditation was. So I kind of had to explain, just sit and be quiet and close your eyes, and then listen to what I'm saying. And after a couple of meditations, the energy in the whole room went up. And then at the end of this conference, the 2-day conference, the end of this conference, the scientist had been sitting there in the corner taking these readings this whole time. And then he put that up on the board and showed everybody, here's when we entered the room on the first day, and here's when we did the meditation, and then here's when so-and-so did this, and so-and-so. And everybody, these professors were just amazed.
Wow.
I was so thrilled to see that happening, that, this is just wonderful. To open up the eyes of college, university professors that are not in the field of this physics.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing.
It
I
was.
think there's so much resistance to this. We're just in this age where people are so focused on materialism and, what they're calling science, which what they really just mean by that is materialism and sort of like the hierarchical, like what does the top, say is true, and no one under the top can decide anything for themselves or interpret data for themselves or, choose which experiments to do or not do. But in reality, we have all of this data, and a lot of it is material, or at least reflected in material reality. And I love what Joe Dispenza does with all of that, because it's so, just like what you're doing, empowering for people. It's teaching people that we really have a lot more control over our reality and ourselves than I think we otherwise are kind of led to believe by
and
what's around us.
Yeah, I'm convinced that it's these entities that are trying to put a veil over our heads. They've been doing this for, thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
I don't know when they first arrived or if they're a product of Mother Earth. Or, I don't know for sure where they came from.
Yeah.
Robert Stanley has some theories on where they came from, but I don't really know. Anyway, so wherever they came from, here they are. And whether we manufactured them ourselves or they came from outer space or they came from Mother Earth, I really don't have any idea. But they're here, and we now have a way to understand what they do, how they do it, and how to get rid of them from our own individual lives. So that's really an empowering tool, and it doesn't cost a thing. All it does is take some time, and it takes effort depending on how attacked you're being. In my case, it took a tremendous amount of effort. Of course, I didn't have anybody else to use as an example either, so that's part of why it took so long.
I like that you point out that that anyone, because when we're talking about this, especially with Jerry Marzinski's work and your experiences, people could think like, well, I don't hear voices, so I don't need that, or but you pointed out these entities around all of us all the time. They're maybe not actively attacking all of us all the time, but they're definitely interacting with most people most of the time, I'll say. And so in what ways do you think that the average person would be sort of experiencing an attack from these beings?
Well, just pay attention to your thoughts, and you'll know. If it's not a thought of gratitude or love or appreciation, and it's something that is more negative, like if you're sick and you feel you don't have enough energy, that's one of the things that they do, is they suck the energy right out of you when they attack you. So if you're feeling really bad about something, then they're going to suck that energy right out of you. Excuse me a second.
Well, and I think the part of the hard part for a lot of people is they've been feeling that way for so long, or they've been thinking those thoughts for so long that it's hard for us to imagine that those thoughts are not us, or that they're not part of who we are, or there's something that we just have to work through or whatever, because I think it just becomes habit. And we just start thinking that this is life. I remember a few years ago, I got really lethargic. I got really uninterested in the crafts and projects I would normally do. I didn't care about hiking anymore. I just sat around a lot. All these things changed all of a sudden. And I literally just thought, I'm getting old. This is what getting old is like. And then I finally had a really good doctor who was like, no, this is not, you're 36 or however, 35 or however old I was then. She's like, this is, something else. And so we figured out that I have I have a thyroid disorder. But that process, I think, goes on in so many ways where we just convince ourselves whatever's happening is this is just the way it is. And so, I think that, these things that you and I are talking about, I've been aware of for some time. And even I am still caught off guard. Earlier today, I just was all of a sudden getting frustrated about really stupid things and kind of angry. And then I realized that was happening. And I think that's the hardest part, is sometimes just realizing that you're going from, this otherwise calm and kind of neutral or happy state into this sort of agitation or annoyance or depression or whatever it is. But I caught myself and I was like, no, that's not what I'm doing right now. I'm going back to where I just was, which was happy and calm and everything's fine. And I sort of was able to switch it. But I think we get caught in that. I think we get used to it. I think we stop kind of noticing it or paying attention to it. And so I really want people listening to take from this that what you're saying can be applied all day, every day to any negativity or any negative feeling or thought that you have.
Oh, absolutely. And if a person pays attention to their thoughts and their feelings, they can nip it in the bud like you did.
Yes. And I think that's the hard part, but you can start doing it anytime.
Yeah, that's a challenge. It's a definite challenge if you've never done it before. So that takes practice.
Kind of being aware and present, more often than we might be used to.
Yeah, when I was doing that and noticing my thoughts or trying to notice my thoughts, there were times I didn't notice until it was too late.
Yeah.
And then there were times when I noticed in the middle of a sentence, and then I would stop.
Yeah.
And I'd say to my friends, hang on, let me do a redo here. And they'd look at me like, do what?
Start over.
Okay, well, so my friend is a little nuts, and so let's just let her do what she's doing. And let me just do a do-over, because I didn't want to go there. I didn't mean to say that, or I didn't want to say that, but there I did, and so I need to correct that right here and now. So I kind of did that for a while, because it was hard for me to pay attention to all my thoughts. I know what a challenge it is. Well, you can do it. Anybody can. You just have to be stubborn and tenacious, I guess.
Yes. and to want that for yourself, and to recognize that you're worth that, and you should be able to live like that. You should be able to live in happiness and health and move forward in that. But I wonder, since you clearly have, help from spirit or the universe or whatever you call that, like the book is thrown at you and you're sort of like guided on this path. But did you ever feel like these entities were getting to the point where they were like, oh no, she's gonna have like the tools against us, like we have to stop her? Was there ever a point where you felt like it ramp up, or sort of like you were being intentionally suppressed or something?
That's what everybody needs to know. The minute you start doing this, they will ramp up. Because they're fighting for survival. You're getting ready to starve them to death.
Yeah.
And so they will. Everybody needs to know that the moment that you start in with the "That's a Lie" program, they're definitely going to fight back. So you can expect that, because it doesn't mean it's not working. It means it is working, and they're fighting back until they know that you're serious.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people say, oh, it didn't work and that scared me, and so never mind. And then they'll go right back. And then the voices are like, okay, we still got this one.
We won. Yeah. It's just actually, it reminds me of the same process you have to go through with a child or with a dog, where you're like literally training them to know the boundaries of something, It's like they're going to test you and test you and test you. And sometimes they're going to ramp it up to the highest they can to make sure that this is actually the boundary. And after that process, they're like, okay, that's the boundary.
Yeah, I think that's that way with anything in life. In
True.
fact, if you have people around you, like colleagues, or let's give a different example. If you're in say high school or even college, and you're getting picked on, well, the minute that you stand up for yourself and you stay with it, then you're going to be respected by others, and then you're going to be picked on less. You might be picked on more to begin with, just like the voices do, but in the end, you won't be picked on at all, and you'll be respected. And you'll respect yourself for doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, that empowerment goes a long way to transformation, basically.
Yeah, it's like the real hero's journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this book that you and Jerry worked on, is this your first book together?
Yes, it is. And it's called An Amazing Journey into the Psychotic Mind and Breaking the Spell of the Ivory Tower.
I love that.
It goes into, and are you going to put links down below the interview?
Yes. Yeah, I definitely will do that.
Okay.
And then I'll also pull up your site now. Is the book linked to from your site?
Yes, it is.
So let me show people that then. So this is your site, keyholejourney.com.
Yeah, go to topics.
Topics.
And then you'll see the book. It's in blue.
Oh, I see. New book by Jerry Marzinski and Swiney. Here we go. Oh, awesome. So from Lulu, you can buy it. And is that the best place to buy it?
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
It's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and other books, but I noticed that their prices are being different in some cases. So
Okay.
I think Lulu is probably your best bet.
I like Lulu a lot. So is
Yeah.
this, and I know there was something cool about the cover image that happened.
Oh, yeah. Well, when we finished the what we thought was the final draft of the book, I ordered a couple of proof copies so that Jerry and I could have our own and read them over before we went to publishing. Well, excuse me a minute. I need to get a drink of water.
You're fine. Well, that's cool. That's where you can buy Sherry's book. Actually, let's look at some other stuff on her site. The site is actually really cool. They have so many good resources here. Even obviously just on this topics page, meditation, martial arts, economics. I mean, there's everything. I've clicked through here a bit, and it's a really cool. This is Sherry's personal site. Jerry has his own site as well, but Jerry did say last time he was on Rogue that Sherry's site he kind of almost uses as his own because she puts more into it and keeps it updated more often, kind of. So there's just so much here that you can look into on all the topics that we love on this show and other shows, and more. And so it's a really cool site. It's a really cool resource. We've got movies.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I like the movies page.
Really, just like so much time and effort has gone into this, curating such a cool collection of stuff. It's a really cool site. So,
yeah. So can you bring up the book cover?
Yeah, let me go back to that. Here we go. Yep, got the cover up.
Okay, I can't see it, but
no, yeah, you would see it if you were watching on YouTube, but not from your angle.
Okay. All right, good. So that cover, we had ordered the proof copy, and then somehow this woman ordered the proof copy, and she wrote to us saying, this cover isn't all that good, and I'm a graphic artist, and so I want to offer you my services to help you with that cover.
Oh, wow.
I had gotten, and I noticed that there was somebody that purchased the book, so I wrote to Lulu and I said, how can this be?
Yeah.
This is supposed to be a proof, but it's not supposed to be published. So they wrote a note, and I said, when we get the regular book out, I want to send this person a free copy. And so I wrote a note and gave it to Lulu, and they sent it to this woman who then wrote us and said offered to help us with the cover. So that was a real blessing. She did a beautiful job for us.
Well, and how random that you said that shouldn't have happened. She shouldn't have been able to even get the book at all, and that's the only reason why she was able to offer that. So it's a pretty cool.
Yeah, I think she's from Italy.
Wow.
So it was a very unusual gift that the universe gave us. It's just it wasn't. I don't believe in accidents or coincidences at all.
Me either. That's pretty cool. Yeah, and that's also just randomly speaks to the quality of Lulu as a company too, that they would help you get that note to her, and kind of, because if it was Amazon, they'd be like, who cares? Like, stop talking to us. Shut up. Like, they're not interested in helping people.
Lulu is really customer oriented. They really they have a tremendous, excellent customer service.
I agree. I really like them. I also have one of my my books on Lulu because they're the only one who does hardcovers, and I wanted a hardcover option. So, and I really like them as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that book now is out for anyone to go grab, and like you pointed out, it's actually pretty short. So that's that can be nice because it can be hard to find time to read lately in the chaos of the world.
There's photographs in there too. There's pictures in there to take up some of the spacing.
That's cool.
The print is a little bit large for us older folks that have, trouble seeing.
Yeah, I made the mistake of making my print much too small in my last book, and I'm gonna not do that again.
Yeah, I mean, I like to read, but when I get a book that I have to use a magnifying glass practically to read it, it's just, it's not worth the effort anymore.
No, nobody wants that.
Yeah.
You finally got there, and then that's gonna slow you down. So, now that the book is out, what are your kind of next topics or goals or projects that you're going to tackle? Or are you just kind of going to roll into your garden and play there for a while?
I'm going to do both. I'm already, I'm getting ready to start doing some indoor planting with some of the seeds, to get them ready for springtime. But
yeah,
Jerry has a second book that he started quite some time ago, and I want to help him with it like I did with this one. But this is actually his personal story of the journey that he's taken. And it'll be a full size book. It won't be short like this one. But also I'll probably be the editor of that book rather than the co-author. So, because this will be his life and his journey. And it's an excellent story.
Yeah.
So it needs to be told as a story. Whereas this book is not told as a story. These are just kind of, here's the facts.
Yeah. More like a guidebook.
Yeah, here's the problem and here's how to fix it, if you want to. So,
right.
Yeah, and here's the background, here's the history, because we thought that was important to put the history of psychiatry and the stuff that they've done.
Yeah.
That has only damaged people.
Agreed.
So we put that history in to give the reader who may not be familiar with mental illness at all some kind of an idea of what the psychiatrist and the medical industry has done to people.
Yeah.
And, yeah,
and it goes back to that sort of materialist point of view and paradigm. It's part of what has caused that, because they have no consideration that this might actually be actual real entities that are affecting people in these ways. And so how can you solve a problem that you can't even see correctly?
Yeah, they're convinced that it's a physical disease, and it's not even a disease. It's something attacking them.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah, and I think it's really cool that voices like you two and other people working on the same angle are out there now and hopefully getting more and more attention. I don't know if we'll ever convince the sort of like core of the materialists, but I just hope more people are at least exposed to that idea, to at least consider it and make up their own mind about it. Because if you've never even come across it, then it just seems so sad to me that you can just get lost there.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is, Jerry and I aren't that popular right now. So we're not even a thorn in the side of the pharmaceutical companies. But when this information starts to spread, and we become and our results are that there's an awful lot of people that are not buying into the propaganda story.
Yeah.
And we're not the only ones doing that. But when that happens, then we can kind of foresee what'll happen. I mean, things like they may try to shut down our websites, for example.
Yes.
But it'll be too late because the information's already out.
Yes. I love that. Yep. They can try whatever they want. We don't invite it and we don't agree to it and we do not consent, but it won't stop anything.
No, it won't stop because the message is out. It's in the field. And it's too late for those guys.
I like it. And like you said, you have this body of people who have actually been helped by it. And so that'll grow and grow too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I hope so. I really hope so. That's our goal, is to help people.
Absolutely.
Get through this and get rid of these things.
Absolutely. And that would make at least part of the suffering, somewhat redeemed.
Yeah, and there's so much suffering going on this planet for all kinds of different reasons. But I think behind the whole thing is this darkness that these entities that feed off of negative energy. And I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying that I think that they're behind the whole thing.
Yeah.
They're influencing.
They're kind of finding whatever cracks in the structure they can find and like jamming stuff in there.
Yeah, and they're influencing our controllers, or the controllers, what I call controllers, our government and our corporations and those kind of people. They're being influenced. Whether they know it or not is irrelevant.
Right.
They're still, if they're humans, and I don't even know if that's true.
True. Yeah, that's a good point.
But let's say that they are humans, then, you know, if they're being influenced by these things and they're not aware of it, well then, you know, we can kind of understand why they're doing what they're doing, because what they're doing otherwise makes no sense unless they're not human.
Right. Yeah, it gives you a little bit of compassion if you can get to that point and see, you know, that a lot of people acting in the worst ways that we can imagine are, at least at some level, I don't want to take the responsibility away from them, because I feel like at some level you're still, you know, you still have the power to stop it and you haven't yet. But at the very least, you can have compassion for that, because at some level they're suffering.
We all have to take responsibility for our actions. Every one of us has to take responsibility for our actions, but there's also the collective, the field. Here's what I see. When this propaganda comes out, we have several things going on, but we have the controllers who want to control us for their own reasons. And they're being influenced by the dark side. Okay. And then we have, but the dark side can't create anything of their own. So this propaganda has to be put out to make us feel however we're supposed to feel, so that we can be afraid, or we can be anxious, or we can be angry, or we can be whatever feeling.
Right.
So that we can put that out in the field and create that thing that they want created, because they don't have a power to do that.
Yeah.
So we're creating this world for these entities, and we don't even know it.
Yeah.
It's something to think about.
Well, and it goes back to this thing that I love to always bring things back to, which is that you healing yourself and you detaching yourself from these entities and making that barrier and making that boundary, that, you know, heals you, but then it allows you to then heal others. But also, you know, those entities that you've detached from you now have that experience of sort of failing or whatever, and having their hole in there, or maybe even you can send them into that light, you know, and whatever that does, and gets rid of them. And so you, in multiple ways, are literally changing the entire world just by healing yourself. And I love that.
I totally agree with that. In fact, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine this evening about that very thing. You know, she was talking about the craziness that some women are doing. I mean, these, you know, she showed me some kind of commercial or YouTube or something that was talking about how, let's see, what be a lady, I think is what it was called. Anyway, it was very weird. It showed all kinds of faces of women dressed in very seductive type of attire, and you know, like dancing girls and you know, prostitutes and, you know, things like that. And I think I'm not sure, but I kind of think it was a double loaded kind of message. It was probably a pun on the messages that we hear. You got to have big lips, and you got to have big boobs, and you got to have, you know, this story. Nobody.
You got to sell your body, if otherwise.
Sell your body.
Yeah.
You have to be beautiful. You have to be skinny. You have to be this to be, you know, loved.
Right.
See, now that's all. If those women believe that, then they do that. Then their lives are ruined.
Yeah.
And the dark side is having a feast.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it.
Absolutely.
I don't judge these women.
Right.
because they're not awake. They're ignorant. As long as they're only hurting themselves, well, that's not a good thing. But I mean, this is a complicated world.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no one answer, but that's my take on it. And it may not be the right take, but that's my take on it for now.
Well, I think it's like we kind of said earlier too, where when you do go through this and you do then heal yourself, you do have a lot more compassion for people who are still suffering. And it's almost like you start to look at people who are going through that as like, and not to degrade them, but like a child, you're like, oh, you don't get it yet. Like, let me help you if I can. Which brings me to this question that someone just asked in the chat, which is, do people who are, I can't remember how they put it, but are people who are sort of developmentally delayed or disabled, or people who are otherwise afflicted in these ways, do they get attacked by these entities? Maybe even more so because they maybe even have less ability to defend. And it makes me think of, some of the people I've worked with who deal with things like that. And I do definitely think that they do experience this. And I wonder if you agree that I still think you can teach people to use these tools to stop that from happening, no matter what kind of state of mind they're in. I mean, I had a child talking to me recently about the bad things that came at night. And I mean, her parents wouldn't have taken this seriously at all. But to me, I'm like, oh shit, like she's dealing with this already as a child. And so I was telling her, just tell them to go away. Tell them they're not welcome there. And this is not, real. And this is not, or it's not real, but that it's not, they're not allowed, and just get rid of them, kick them out. And she's like, I can do that. And I was like, yeah, you can do that. Tell them to go away. I was like, pretend I'm there with you and I'll help you too. Fight them off. We'll kick them out. And she was like, yeah, and that was empowering for her. And so I think no matter what your sort of state of awareness or intelligence or whatever, I think you can still be taught some of the basic fundamentals of these concepts to protect yourself.
Yeah, I agree with that. As far as I don't know what the politically correct phrase is, but a mentally retarded person.
Yeah.
What are they calling them these days?
I mean,
or something.
People don't, I think people forget that there actually is mental retardation. And so that is the word for it. Yeah, and then there's also all sorts of other disabilities and stuff. So. Right.
So I think if the person is suffering from that, you might still be able to get through to them.
Yeah.
In their own way. I don't think that they're a hopeless case at all. So I think that you could probably teach them to just say that's a lie.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I really love the simplicity of this and the accessibility of it and the power of it. And it's horrifying that it had to come from such a dark experience and journey, but it's a beautiful result in the end. And I think that's so cool. And I just, as we're kind of winding down, is there anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to explore?
No, I think we pretty well covered most of what I thought we were going to talk about. I just would encourage everybody to pay attention to their own thoughts and notice what you're thinking, and then take action from there.
I love that. That's a beautiful set of words and advice to end on. So thank you for that. And fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. This has been your analog, electric, concentric dose of wisdom, according to Sherry Swiney. Sherry, thank you so much. It's been a very powerful show, and I appreciate you sharing this with us tonight.
I enjoyed being on the show, Lindsay, very much. Thank you.
Those pesky parasites of the unseen can latch on to so many and cause a host of problems, from the physical to the mental and the spiritual. And their energy-sapping exploits at our expense are unfair and can feel overwhelming, especially to those who feel alone, trapped, and without hope. But their existence and attacks can drive us further into the illusion that we are helpless victims and increase our perceived isolation. But their greatest fear is that we see through their cheap tricks. And when we know their voices are not our own, we can then also learn to silence them. When we know our wills are stronger than theirs, then we can kick them out. And when we know our bodies, energetic and physical, are sovereign, then they can never come back. Claim your power, know your truth, and be strong in your resolve to live your own path. And until you've mastered the boundaries of the spiritual, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
It's a one-on-one lesson, so do your homework. Make your dome hurt while up on earth. My bones are blessed from holy dirt. Vibes manifested to words that told me search for verbs and adjectives to describe birth. Worth more than one can speak. While the tongue feeds a weak, a sour taste in your mouth, bittersweet. Words can also kill you when you sleep. Mind condition, low frequencies while the subconscious mind listens. I can tell a vision filled with lies, disguised as truth, and spread it like the word to the youth. Watch the tube. A place where the God gets booed is sorcery. To recreate a God forgery does more than meets the eye. Not too many know. Just hear me flow like the eye of Horus Henio. Yeah, not ready to leave until we believe we're free to go. You hear me? Go.
Sculpted from the ether, the material will eat ya. Stuck on this plane, lanes use jet fuel to greet ya. The dimensional 3 ain't beating me on top of the 4th. Didn't climb Jacob's ladder to squab with a sword. Forged with Yggdrasil, branch down. Try quiet your lamps now. Ascension past the matter that they slam out they damn mouths. We ain't on land now, but they over understand. Sacrificing wisdom, hoarding dumber, kosher, wicked hands. Putting faith in worthless worship of the mortals. Artificial portals, mass ingestion of the black goo. Bioengineered morsels, conversing with machine elves. Bypassing maggots, they stuck on Android screens now. I'm scrolling emerald tablets. Moloch living lavish, off the backs of the savage. Them clasp hands at the Sabbath. Smack of energy damage, they done twisted the tongues. But nanotech in the lungs, the awakening's begun. All they really can do is fucking run.